Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining me. We'll just give it another 2 minutes while the rest of people join, and then we'll get started. Thanks. All right. I think we can get started now. There we go. Awesome. Hello, and thank you, everyone, for joining me today for our webinar on scenarios. Today, we're going to look at how to create a long-term view of your farm with scenarios. So I'm your host for today. My name is Sudesha Mandali, and I'm a partner success manager here at Figured. So before we get started, I just wanted to go through a few housekeeping rules with Zoom, just make sure that everyone gets the best experience possible. So firstly, we recommend you close down as many apps as you can on your computer during the webinar to give Zoom the best opportunity to stream clearly. So it's not just your internet connection, it may also be the number of things you have open on your computer. So if you lose what's happening while we're moving through the webinar, just look to the bottom of your screen and you'll be able to see a Zoom icon. Click on that and it'll either open you into your toolbar, or you can view the webinar, or jump you straight back into the webinar. So if you have a question during the webinar, please click on the Q&A option that you'll see in your Zoom toolbar, and you can put it in there. If we can answer during the webinar, we will. We've got one or two of the team on the chat there as well. Alternatively, I'll just come back around to it at the end and cover it off. That way also everyone gets the benefit of hearing what it is the question was. Awesome. So let's get started. I'd like to quickly talk about our webinar series and what you can expect to see in these upcoming sessions. So we'll be running 2 sessions each week for 4 weeks on a Tuesday and a Thursday. Now, we've had our first 2 on scenarios last week. We had a great one earlier today on planning. And we've got our second session on planning coming up this Thursday at 11, and the subsequent part 2 of the session on the Thursday as well. These are also recorded and put up on our YouTube channel. So the first 2, we're taking a look at a long-term view of your farm and how you can model out changes or ideas against this long-term scenario plan. And then in the session that my colleague Scott's doing, we're taking a look at how we take a lot of this annualized data that we've generated out of the scenario and turn it into an actionable 12-month annual plan using Figured's planning grid tool. So as it says there, 12-month plan to track, report, and reforecast against the 2021 plan, and subsequent annual plans aligned to your long-term goals will help you achieve them and keep you focused. These are also great for those lending discussions you're having with your bank. So what's on today? So today we're going to take a look at is, why is it important for farmers to be prepared and have a plan? We'll take a look at the scenario tool itself, why Figured built it, and how we intend to use it. Also, what's good in the tool itself. Then we'll jump into the scenario tool itself and look at how to create a scenario, then how to set your opening position by adding in your assets and liabilities. And then at the end, we'll take a brief break for some questions and answers. Awesome. Before we get started, we'll be covering some great content that you may need assistance with down the track. So there are tools and resources available to you, such as our live chat support. We do suggest you reach out to your accountant in the first instance when needing help with Figured. If required, they will direct you to us for further assistance. Now, YouTube channel is also a really, really good source of material. So it has a wide range of content from previous webinars through to detailed tutorials on specific areas of the application, excuse me. What you'll also find on there is these past webinars that have been running. So you'll find the 2 that I did last week, and you'll also find the 2 on planning that Scott's done as well. Now, we've also got a blog area on our main figured.com website. So it's a great area to jump on and have a look at some of the case studies that we've been running, both with farmers and other industry professionals. It's a good kind of place to keep yourself on a pulse of what we find important in the world of Figured. So definitely check that out. That's figured.com/blog. So before we get properly into scenario 2, I would like to talk about the why around future planning. Why is it important for farmers to future-proof their business? So in a constantly changing world that is growing increasingly volatile, as we've seen, we are faced with new and unexpected challenges each year. So knowing where your business is now and then where it's headed is vital in ensuring your survival through difficult times and also profitability during the good. So most recently, we've seen a nationwide drought. So this put farms on the back foot heading into the new year, and the onslaught of COVID-19 and subsequent lockdowns further increased the pressure, not just on agriculture, but on the economy in general. So these are events that require a strong understanding of your farm's financial position, along with a good grasp of where your weaknesses and strengths are, so you can make the right decisions at the right time. So more on recent events, we've seen meat processing slow down by up to 40% due to distancing measures within processing facilities. So this is impacting farmers who are now faced with reduced income streams and increased costs to keep stock live on farm. So, and on the dairy side, we've seen Farmgate with a stable forecast through to the end of this year. However, 2021 is looking like it's going to be a reduced forecast payout. So this will be an immediate impact on the farm, seeing an adjustment of expenses to maintain an acceptable profit margin. So you'll be looking for a tool to try and figure out what is the long-term effects of all of these various market factors and how can I be better prepared for them. So these factors obviously are among others, are making everyday decisions even harder. So farmers are looking to strengthen their equity positions by focusing on paying down debt and talking to their bank manager, more importantly, about consolidating the existing debt that they have. So with the interest rates being at an all-time low as it is, it's also an even better time to look at renegotiating some existing rates or getting some good rates with some new lending. So with everyday decision-making becoming increasingly harder, it's important to know where you stand so you can make the right choices now. So here at Figured, we've come up with the now where, not come up with using the now where how concept that helps you plan for today and the future so you can be confident and drive success. So if we can apply this now where how through to our scenario planning activity, it's going to guide us through and make sure we get a plan out the other side that's actionable. So how does this work? So scenario 2 lets you see further down the road with a detailed 2 to 10 year plans. A lot of flexibility there from 2 all the way up to 10 years. So you can start by building now. So this is a business as usual plan and takes your last 12 months of financial data and steps it forward by 5 years. So or by your chosen amount of years. So doing this helps create a picture of where your business is headed in its current state. So this becomes your guiding North Star, a very, very important thing to have. Sometimes you might find that your current trajectory is not what you expected, and an immediate change might be required. So that's, again, straight away an extremely important insight to have, especially at a time like this where your current business activity is what you're depending on to carry yourself through. So the where is your tailored scenario plan for any future event. So this could be a goal you may have currently, such as selling certain portions of the business, succession planning to help the next generation take over. You can also plan for a rainy day or an emergency, or just make sure your business can stand up against a crisis or price fluctuations, both of which we are seeing right now. And then the how to cap it off is the 12-month plan that helps you translate your long-term goals into actionable and achievable short-term goals. So for the planning sessions we had earlier, for those of you who did or didn't go, that's where we really, Scott took a look at how to take some of these values and put it into planning and really get the best output at the end. So now let's take a look at the scenario tool and how it helps us achieve this. So we can take a look at some of the exciting things we can do within the tool that makes it easier for us. So you can easily create your starting position using existing financial data you have within Figured in Xero. So this is really powerful as it not only reduces the time needed to complete the scenario, but greatly improves the accuracy of the future plans as they are built on your past information to date. So it's a really, really strong data set to build yourself off there. Enter your assets and liabilities to create a complete picture of your business position. So we also calculate here some really, really handy stats, such as your loan to value ratio and your equity position. So your equity position might be something you already know. The LVR, very, very important in bank conversations recently. As of the last week, you've seen some of those LVR restrictions lifted. You also might still find low equity margin penalty interest that's affecting your lending conversation. So good to also get those fleshed out and figure out what your total obligation is going to be for that debt. And as we covered earlier, model any change that you want. Easily make a copy of your base scenario, which we'll take a look at, and model changes such as new purchases, new lending, selling off existing assets, increasing your operation size, leasing out a block, or preparing for a drop in global prices. So as you can see, a lot of different options for us here in the scenario tool and how we can cut and slice our business and where it's going. So let's really jump in now and take a look at how we can get this done. So before we get started for this webinar, it'd be useful to expect that you either currently already have a figure, which is most likely, and that you may already have a scenario created. Now, while it can be really useful for you to follow along while we're doing this exercise, only do so if you have a second screen and you can also still watch as we carry it through. What I would suggest, if you don't have a way of multitasking efficiently, just watch through the video. It's recorded. We already have last week's version up on YouTube, and we'll most likely be uploading this version as well. That way, you can get the information in right now as we go through it, understand some of these concepts, and then later on, open up the YouTube video and then follow along at your own pace as well. So without further ado, let's jump into it. So we're going to take a look, first of all, at how to create a scenario. So to create a scenario, the first thing we do is navigate to scenarios using the menu bar option on the left, as you see highlighted there. So you see dashboard operations, the planning grid, they open there as well. We click on scenarios, takes us into the scenario section. Once we head into that, we can go ahead and click on create new scenario over on the top right-hand side. Now, if it's a brand new scenario, we'll just see a big green button that says create new scenario. So we click on that and we can take it into a window that lets us enter in some initial details for this scenario. So the first thing we need to enter is the name. If this is your base scenario, you name it status quo. Now, the reason we name it status quo, and as I spoke to earlier about this business as usual scenario, is it's your last 12 months or whatever previous 12 months of data you choose to import stepped forward by 5 years. That's our status quo. Now we use that, as I said before, to sense check our business as it is right now, or to potentially find out any issues or holes that may be apparent. But from a scenario perspective within Figured, we also use it as our basis to copy off. So you create that status quo, you put in all that work, step it forward, and you leave it there as a status quo. And then down the track, when you need to do a new scenario, instead of messing up this business as usual one that you have, you just make a copy. You can make as many copies as you want, and you create your new scenario using that copy. That way you've already got your plan set. It's already got all of your tailoring in it as your current business. And you basically just have to go ahead and start tweaking the few things that you created the scenario for. So that's where status quo comes on, and that's why we use it as we move through here. So the next is select your type. So you can be used to help you sort through your different scenarios. So we have a few different types. So choose the one that's most appropriate. And then we have a description there as well, as it says business as usual for the next 5 years. So now we can select the start date of the scenario. You can only choose the most recent financial year and of course future years. Next, you can select the duration. And your start date actually would be in June 2019. You'll notice you might not be able to go back any further than that, and that's by design. You know, it's a future dated tool. We don't want you going back and creating future dated from past dates. It doesn't make too much sense. You'll only find the most recent financial year and future ones as was just set as your start date. So your duration, as I mentioned, anywhere between 1 to 10 years. The status quo is set at 5, so you can step that up or down. And the last option there is shared. So when it comes to shared, all scenarios by default are shared. You can change that to be the type private. And if it's private, that means nobody else, not anybody with admin access on your farm can see that scenario, only your user type. So that's good if you're creating something within your own silo. If you've got a lot of other people, such as bank managers and accountants on your farm, and you just want to do your own thing, set it to private and nobody else can see it. And you can always come back and set it to shared when you're ready to share it with anybody else. So next, you just select your farm operation type. In this particular one, it's a dairy livestock setup. And down there, you'll see on the display metrics, it'll flick that over to kilograms of milk solids if it's dairy, or leave it as $ per hectare otherwise. Once you're done with that, over on the bottom right-hand side, we can go ahead and click on next. Next, we get to choose our starting point. So we can choose to start from our scenario from a blank template, or we can loading existing financial data from Figured and 0. So we're going to go ahead and import our data, and we'll select import and use my farm data. Great, so on the import my farm data, we can choose to import either actuals, forecast, or a combination of actuals and forecast data. So as long as it lives in figured in zero, you can import it in. So you do this by selecting the data type and then the actuals to date. In this example here, I'm selecting actuals plus forecast with actuals to March 2020. So effectively, it's a full actuals for the previous year. Now, a good thing to note on this, when you select the year, it always automatically is always going to pull in 12 months worth of data. So you can't set or change the duration. You can only set or change where your actuals date ends. So if you're trying to import 3 or 4 months, it's not going to work. It's always going to be a full year, and use the actuals to define where that goes. You can choose a cash or a profit basis that you want to create the scenario on. By default, if you're unsure, leave it as cash. And next, you can select the income and expense source. So for income, you can import your operation trackers within Figured, and also any other income you've coded in Figured and Zero. So ticking farm working expenses as well will bring through all your coded expenses from the previous financial year or whatever financial year you chose to import in. This is a great feature as that specific expense amounts and times of the year in which they are spent are integrated into the scenario model. So this will improve the accuracy in future years, and down the track as well, improve the accuracy of your annual plans as you bring that information back. So once we're satisfied, we can go ahead and click import and create on the bottom right. That's going to go ahead and create our scenario for us. So at this point here, congratulations, you've created your first scenario. Now you might find there's a loading screen that can take a little bit of time. Obviously, if you've chosen import data and it's trying to import it in, it's going to be dependent on a few different things, such as the amount of data you have, and also potentially your internet connection as well. So if it is taking a while, just leave it, give it a second. You can click into any other part of Figured and continue working in somewhere else, and you can come back to it in about 5-10 minutes, and that scenario will be ready for you to click in. So now that the scenario is created, we are shown the opening position page. This is where we enter our assets and our loans. We see at the top assets, the bottom liabilities. It's a good idea to have your most recent balance sheet and any loan information handy so you can quickly enter these in. So this is really, really important to make sure you get this information accurate. It's the one piece of information that you have to enter manually that is not imported and also not based off any existing financial data. So you've got bank feeds generating those zero transactions, which is both what Figured's built off. So it's all very accurate. We're basically coming through from your bank. Whereas assets and liabilities, the responsibility is up to you to maintain the accuracy. So get out your bank statements, get that interest information and your repayment information, your current owing amount. And if you're unsure, talk to your accountant. They'll have your most recent balance sheet on hand, and they'll let you know what you can and can't add in. So let's get started by entering an asset, and we do this by clicking on Add Asset there on that bottom, on that top left. So once we move into the Add Asset window, we're going to enter a rural property asset, and you can see there where we choose rural property as the type and land home as the name. Obviously, the name can be whatever you want it to be. Now, there's quite a few different types that you can choose as well. So if we take a look, other than rural property, we have opening cash position, livestock, crops, horticulture, residential property, development, machinery and equipment. And another one that's missing there is shares. And there's another catch-all called other. And so these are really, really, these are obviously quite broad and cover quite a few different areas. If you need to create trackers, you've got your 3 options there for trackers, and residential property and development will cover most other things, same with machinery and equipment. So if you don't find any there, just group it into the other type, and that should suffice. Now with the rural property, when you choose that option, you do get the option of total area and effective area. And so as you enter that in and enter in the total value, it's going to work out a value per hectare or vice versa. So once you're done, go ahead, press save, and that's going to then save in that asset. So now let's take a look at how to add a liability, which we click on here, add liability. And now the first thing we see is the ability to choose a type, a name, which we've named here term loan 021. So it's good to maintain those same naming conventions that you may have existing in your internet banking or what the bank's given you. It's just good to create that carryover. Now we also have a few different options here: overdraft, bank loan, home loan, family loan, hire purchase, and again, there's that catch-all of other. Now here we enter in a facility limit and an opening balance. Now your opening balance is going to be what you currently owe. Your facility limit will be the original amount that you borrowed. Over on the repayment type, you can choose a few different repayment types here. So with your repayment type, you're able to choose table, interest only, or fixed principal. Now for table, for those of you that don't know, that stands for your normal mortgage or loan payment that you may make. That means your payment consists of a portion of interest and a portion of principal. So select that if you're in doubt. That's going to be most likely what you have. If you're an interest only, you more than likely will know or can see that, and you choose that option there. Enter the interest rate and term remaining, and that's going to save in that loan there as well. So this repayment type is going to come back around and be really powerful down the track in the proposition, where we look at how we can restructure repayment types and figure out some information about the loan that we could previously only figure out by talking to the bank. Let's go ahead and press save. And now, as we can see here, we've got a fully created asset and liability opening position. You can see we've got a land, home, dairy company shares, motor vehicles, 2 loans as well. In this particular case, they're both sitting on interest only. So it's important to remember not to get too detailed with your assets and liabilities though. So you want to keep it limited, to your major assets and loans. If you have a number of smaller loans or assets, you can consolidate them under the asset type or liability type of other that I showed just before. This is also going to reduce clutter in your scenario while still maintaining that information. So obviously, if your farm net worth is up into the millions, you don't want to be, capturing assets that are down in, below 5,000, 4,000, 3,000 around that area. While it might be important, it's just going to really muddy up the scenario. And it also is an important point to illustrate that the scenario has a goal in the end of it. So you're only putting in as much information that maintains its accuracy, but still drives you towards that goal. So creating an immensely large financial position that's extremely detailed, while it might be great, unless you're really going to use that granularity, it's just going to end up giving you a lot of scrolling in the scenario tool itself. And if you ever need to flesh something out, you can always copy, create a new scenario, and then really build out those smaller assets and liabilities. If you're looking at selling a bunch off, before the main status quo, leave it as this. So you can see there, that's our full asset position there. Our liabilities are shown just down here. And then more importantly, on the bottom right here, we can see our total assets, and we can see those banking stats we spoke about earlier. So asset, loan to value ratio, and our equity positions. These are, again, very important in the banking conversation. You might take this report or take this output straight to your bank to have a chat with, or you can invite your banker in here to talk about. So this completes our opening position. So next, we're going to click on, next on the bottom right there, and we'll move across to our proposition page. So the proposition page is where we enter the remaining data for the scenario. And as we can see at the top there, we can show that data has been imported. And so when you get to your proposition, you've entered your opening position. Once you're done with this page, a majority or actually all of your data entry is going to have been completed. So there are 5 components to the proposition. They are the proposition itself, and obviously opening position we also entered in earlier, the proposition itself. Then we've got income, expenses, and we end on summary. So for today, we've already entered the opening position. We're going to go ahead and take a look at proposition. So to enter in our proposition, what we want to do is click on the option to add proposition. Now, when we click on add proposition, the great part about adding a proposition is the ability to create an asset purchase and simultaneously add a funding source for this purchase. So obviously, our opening position has already been created. We're seeing all those assets and liabilities in there. When we want to create a new one, we're not going ahead and doing it like we did with the opening positions. It's more than likely going to be a future dated purchase or asset entry. So the ability to enter in the funding source attached to that just creates a more holistic process and sort of more in line with how you would actually think this out. So to do that, you can go ahead and click on add proposition. This brings you into the add asset window. So choose your asset type as we did before, enter it in as we did here with the tractor with the total value of 50,000. And then we're going to tick add funding source for this asset purchase. If you do that and go ahead and press save, this will save the asset and take you to a loan window where we'll have inputted the amount and name and allow you to complete the remaining information. So this is a quick and easy way to test our purchases before heading in to talk to any dealers or lenders. It gives you the clarity to help you make the best decision before taking out new debt. So this is really, really important here. Extremely quick, 3 or 4 or 5 clicks really to create the asset, then add the loan against it and the repayment terms and chart it out. Especially with those smaller repayment terms, 5 to 7 to 10 years, sitting at about 9 to 10, 11% interest, sometimes a bit higher than that. It's very, very important to know what your obligations are, especially around the interest portion. So entering it in here and stepping it out, you're going to get that clarity. Now to take that, to your bank as evidence of going through it, or just walk in with a bit more confidence about your ability to service that debt. Awesome. So expanding the proposition will also show you the assets and liabilities you entered in the opening position. So you can edit any of these items as well in this proposition window by just clicking anywhere in their title. So there's a few different things that we can do with this now that we're in this main proposition window. So first, let's take a look, at editing an asset. So we see here into the edit asset window, we can see here that we can choose a few different details when we're editing an asset. So the first thing we can check is revaluation. So down at the very bottom, we have an option for revaluations. So this here allows you to revalue the asset as of a certain value and as of a certain date. So we can see here, we've revalued as the 1st of June, 2020 from 75,000 down to 65,000. So right now, the depreciation capability in Figured, we're still building that out to become nice and robust. So in the meantime, you have to enter your depreciation expense on its own, which we'll take a look at in the next session, and also depreciate or revalue your assets accordingly. Now, obviously, this revaluation may also apply to a house, and the value may have gone up, in which case you can do the same thing as so. So to sell an asset, you choose a sale option, and you can choose sale details such as your date, your price, and your sale expense if you do have one. So you can choose to either sell the asset at this point, and the proceeds will go into a system bank account that sits behind each scenario. Alternatively, you can choose to allocate all or some of the proceeds directly to your existing loan. So to do so, select the loan amount and make sure you click reduce limit. This is really, really important here to be able to do this here, where if you are selling, for example, to pay back some debt, or you have an existing debt sitting against an asset that you are selling, the ability to do this just means you can allocate that directly in, or you can just play with what it might look like to take some cash, or to take some cash from a sold asset and apply it to a loan and put in that lump sum payment that will help you bring down those obligations. So again, have a play with that. It's under edit asset in the proposition window, so you're a bit confused about where to find it. There's a different set of options for assets if you're using it in the opening position and in the proposition. So this is in the proposition, and that's in your main scenario page. So once you're done, on the bottom right, you can go ahead and click save. So the next thing we're going to take a look at is editing an existing loan. So here you have a restructure option that lets you change the repayment type and given date as many times as required. So we see the restructuring option just there. So this is handy if you've actually changed your loan details and need to update the scenario. But more importantly, this is where you test out all the various repayment types before talking to lenders or your bank. So the repayment types you have are interest only, table, and fixed principal, as we spoke about earlier. Moving your loans, especially things like mortgages or other bigger loans as well, between different repayment types can either increase the amount of time, decrease the amount of time taken to pay back a loan, or free up some cash in the instance of going to interest only. So when we saw the lockdown first happen, there was a lot of feedback around, if you can go to interest only, go to interest only. That'll reduce the amount of payments that you have to make at the end of each month. However, obviously you're not paying back any principal. So various different pros and cons to weigh up there. Very difficult to do that without something like the scenario tool. So you get in here, you take your existing loan, you hit the restructure button, and that's going to show you some restructure options like we see just here, where we're going to go ahead and say, all right, on the 21st of March in this instance, if we move to interest only and set the interest only percentage and hit save, it's going to show us what that loan is now going to look like at interest only, which will more likely be a reduced monthly payment. Then we can come back in here, restructure it and say, all right, what if in 4 months time I went back to a table loan setup? And then you can sort of look and see what the damage might be. You can say, look, I might want to stay in interest only for another year or so, create a little bit more cash and do a little bit more that I want to do on farm, or I might not. Either way, the choice is up to you. The most important thing is that you're able to do it in here by hitting into the proposition, clicking on a loan, and using this restructure option to create a restructure. You can create as many as you like, as long as you set the date and the repayment types, and you can delete them just as quick by using that bin icon just on the right. Now down the bottom, we also see one-off repayments. Now one-off repayments, as it says, it's a one-off lump sum repayment into this loan. Really handy again as well when you're having thoughts about how to bring down debt. So how to bring down debt's been a big conversation in the agri space. Maybe not so much at the moment, but at the end of the day, it's always going to be beneficial to your business to pay down debt. And so sometimes one-off repayments are a quick way of making it playing catch up, especially if you've fallen behind through different repayment types. So getting in here, putting in a one-off repayment and ticking on reduce limit is just going to do as it says, reduce the limit of the loan by the amount entered in there. And that add button obviously shows you can add as many as you want into that as well. So one other point on this window just above that is drawdown schedule. If anybody's not aware of that, that is the way that you draw down or receive the money from the bank. So your drawdown schedule would be if you got approved by an X amount and you only chose to draw down 50% of that, you only have an interest obligation on 50% of that loan. Now, that's not very common. If you don't know about it, you probably aren't doing it. But if you do, that's where you enter in your drawdown schedule. If you don't enter anything in, by default, the entire loan is drawn down in the first month that you created, which is fully similar to how we would run a normal loan. Awesome. So that brings us to the end of entering in the opening position and also playing around with our proposition and creating and importing data after creating that scenario. So thank you everyone for joining me. Just before we go to the questions and answers, if anybody doesn't have anything that they would like to ask or add, or we're effectively done now, so you can go ahead and jump off. But for those of you who have questions or want to hang around for any questions that may be coming up, we'll take a brief moment now to take those. So thank you everyone for joining me. And don't forget, on Thursday, we have our next session on scenarios, part 2, where we're going to take a look at how to enter in our income and expenses and play around with that. We'll look at reports, exporting, and also more importantly, we'll take a look at how to copy your scenario, create that copy, and create a new scenario off the back of that. And for anybody more dairy or sheep and beef, we may be taking a look at a couple of use cases around that as well. Also, don't forget to head to our farmer resource page. So we've got a farmer resource page that we've created that's collating a whole lot of useful information, registration links to webinars, the links to these recorded webinars, handy articles, help center articles, you name it. It's all there for you guys. Go to www.figure.com/resource-center. Just if you're in doubt, just go into figure.com and you'll be able to find that farmer resource center there. Awesome. So we got a couple of questions coming through. So we got one from, is it the dairy calendar year 1 June? So the scenario is always going to be based off the financial year that you've got created in your main part of Figure. So what you'll find is in Figure takes your balance date from 0, but also when you create your farm all the while ago, when you did create it on Figure, you were asked to enter in a season year as well. So that's always going to be based off what the scenario is based off. However, in the milk tracker itself, which we'll take a look at in the next session, that shows you just the milk year. So it obviously goes in the right order, starting from June, moving through, and then showing the retros at the bottom. So even though you might have a separate balance date, which is unlikely for dairy, you will see the dairy specific year showing in the milk tracker itself. Hope that answers your question, Hannah. Thanks. Those of you on the line, don't forget again, on Thursday, we have part 2 of our planning with Scott. And then later that same day, we've got my second session. So if you want to get ahead, you can go ahead and watch the next session that's already up on YouTube of my one, get onto Scott's recorded planning and move ahead in that way as well. That's all up on our YouTube channel. Awesome. Looks like we don't have any more questions coming through. So thanks everyone for joining me. And I hope I see you all again soon on our next chat. Take care. Bye.